2 reasons why axes can be much harder to block than swords. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, this won't be news to any of you who've been hit with an axe. How many of you have you been hit by an axe? I'd like you to comment down below and let me know whether you have been hit by axes or not. Now, this is a relatively simple thing, but there are 2 points, and this came up in conversation recently. I made a passing comment about how defending against axes can be quite tricky, and someone said, why? And so I was forced to answer the question, and it made me realise that I might never have concisely answered this on the channel. So, 2 simple points and a simple video. Why sometimes can axes be harder to defend against swords? First reason is they're top heavy, okay? Now, obviously there are different types of axes. Some of them are more balanced than others, some are lighter than others. We've got one-handed axes. This is from Thor's Forge, by the way, so big shout out to Thor's Forge. And this is also from Thor's Forge, magnificent, not just axe, but also sword and spear maker. So it could be that we're talking about something like a massive Dane axe, in other words, a two-handed axe, okay? But these weapons fundamentally are top heavy. Now, you could absolutely apply this to any other top heavy weapon, so something like a mace or a hammer, you know, anything that is top heavy fundamentally carries more momentum at the tip. And this is both a strength and a weakness, generally speaking, for fighting. So one of the advantages, of course, of a sword is that the weight is back towards your hand, and therefore the blade is relatively quick and nimble, which is an advantage. And so you could argue, from that point of view, a sword is more difficult to defend against because it's quick, okay? Your brain has less time to deal with it. Incidentally, for any other Bannerlord players out there, this is something that really bothers me in Bannerlord, is that top heavy weapons in Bannerlord, I don't think, are very correctly modelled. They're basically too quick compared to swords, or you could say swords are too slow. And really no top heavy weapon except for something maybe really light, maybe like this little tomahawk up here. So they pretty much are almost as quick as, yeah, they're probably just about as quick as a sword because they're really small. But once we start to get into larger axe territory, which have a more similar size and reach to a sword, then by and large they are slower moving. They take a little bit more time to load up and then unload. They take a little bit longer to get to target, but they carry a large amount of momentum due to the mass at the end of the lever because they are top heavy weapons. That's why hammers exist. If you want to bash a nail into the wall or a piece of wood, you use a hammer because it carries momentum at the tip. So very clearly they carry momentum. Now, why does that make it hard to block? Quite simply because if you imagine this as a projectile, it means really most of the mass and momentum of the weapon, being careful because this is really sharp, is towards you, and therefore you have a greater amount of inertia essentially to stop. A blade, on the other hand, is actually a pretty lousy bludgeoning weapon. Okay, when you blunt these swords, you may have noticed on a regular basis we whack each other with swords. All you need to do is blunt a sword, put some protective stuff on, and you can hit each other in a sporting fashion, in a friendly fashion, and you don't pick up really many injuries, the occasional bruise, and that's about it. If you blunt an axe and hit one of your friends in standard HEMA sparring gear, they're still going to go to the hospital, okay? If you hit them in their fencing mask, they're going to get knocked out. If you hit them in the arm, it's going to break their arm. So, fundamentally, dealing with these, you know, more top-heavy weapons can be more difficult. Now, how do you do it? If you're using a sword, for example, you defend with the base of the blade. So it's very important. We've got a lever here. This is known as the weak. This is known as the strong. Okay, so if you tried to parry anywhere near the tip, your parry or guard is very likely to collapse and you'll get hit by that top heavy weapon anyway. So it's important you parry with the base of the blade, either point up or point down, or knock the thing aside with what we call a rabat or a beat, a deflection essentially. So there are ways of doing it. But without going into more detail, maybe we can look at the technique detail actually outside, and I can get my glamorous assistant Lucy to help me show this, but we can maybe in the future look at some specific techniques for dealing with these top heavy weapons with swords, for example. But for now, let's just leave it at that. Top heavy weapons carry a lot of inertia. So that's the first reason. What's the second reason? Well, I think this is one that people often don't think about until the very second that someone swings one of these things at them. Okay, so let's start with the sword first. When you block a sword, let's say we block it here on the edge, the rest of the blade projects up here and is away from you. So whether you guard close to your body or far from your body, point up, point down, whatever, there is a straight line from the pommel through the hilt through the blade, okay? And obviously some swords are curved, they either curve backwards or forwards, but generally speaking, let's just use a straight sword as an example here, it doesn't project forwards. The problem with axes, and this is a massive problem, and it gets even bigger. Where have I put that Dane axe? I lost my Dane axe. It projects even further forward, and so the problem is, if you are blocking the shaft, so to speak, then, and you're not going to really block the head, if you're blocking the shaft, the problem is, if I just use my arm instead of a sword for a second, the problem is that blade projects beyond the line of the thing you're blocking at. This means that if people are used to, and I've literally seen this myself, if people are used to blocking swords, they get comfortable blocking things here or here, but when they do it with an axe, the thing comes past that line and whacks them in the side of the head or some other bit of their body. Okay, so that is it, really. Those are the two main reasons. One is they are top heavy, and second is they project beyond the line of the thing that you are blocking or parrying, and that is really nasty. And when you add those two things together, the fact that that has a lot of momentum and it has a blade projecting beyond the thing you're blocking at, you have to block them quite far away from you to not run the risk of your guard collapsing or absorbing some of that enormous momentum that's coming towards you and you getting hit by the blade anyway. So sometimes, unlike in video games, you can block and be hit. Okay, and this is something that HEMA practitioners or reenactors, other martial arts practitioners will be only too familiar with. Sometimes you do put the block in, you do get the sword in the right place and you seem to do everything right, but because of where you've blocked or because of the weapon the other person's using or the amount of force they're using, it collapses and you get hit anyway. So, for these two reasons, and there are obviously things to do with hooking and other things, leverage with axes we could look at, and I have looked in previous videos, but these are the two main headlines. Top heavy, projects beyond the line of the thing you're blocking at. And for those reasons, whether you're defending with your arms or whether you're defending with a stick or a sword or another axe, these things are really, really tricky to defend against and really offensive and really quite scary things. Anyway, I hope that's been somewhat interesting. Do you disagree? Have you been hit by an axe? I really want to know. Hopefully I'll see you down in the comments. I have been Matt Easton. I will of course be again next time. I'll see you back on the channel really soon for another video. Cheers folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.